All right, hello and welcome. How's everyone doing on the not Monday, September the 9th, but instead Tuesday, September the 10th? And yes, as Thomas Potts is saying, I am 24 hours late. Jeff, how you doing?
I'm a little tired. I've had a full day, but I'm good.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm kind of the same way. Fortunately, today hasn't been too horribly full. Yesterday, it was one of those days, where it shouldn't have been that full, but for some reason I got to the end of the day and I was like, oh my goodness, I haven't set anything up. I haven't set up the clip show. I haven't set up any of my streaming stuff. I haven't set up the stream itself. And so I'm like, you know what?
I
I'm not going to worry
noticed.
about this today. What's that?
I noticed you hadn't.
Yeah, and poor Jeff, he's over there pinging me like, "Hey Matt, I think you may have forgotten something because he's the responsible part of this duo." But no, it slipped my mind, and adding on to that, uh, I kind of had like a 1-2 whammy going on yesterday. I do really good at waking up early one day, but then the next day I'm kind of sluggish. I don't know if you're the same way, but like the day you wake up early, I have energy nonstop. But the following day, it kind of catches up with me. And so I had woken up really early to do setup at our church because we meet in a school. We're hoping that maybe in the next couple years we can, if not be in a new building, start building a new building that we can have as a permanent home. But for now, we meet in a church, so we set up and tear down every single week. So I woke up pretty early, at least for me, to go get this all set up. And then something has blown in to the Dallas Fort Worth Metroplex. Like, I'm not sure if it's just the ragweed. There's some other thing going on. There's elm. Whatever this pollen was, I could not step outside with just going into a massive allergy attack.
Jeez.
So like I was already tired, but then having the allergies on top of that, it just like it's like welding your eyes shut. And so you know what? I'm I'm not gonna. I had enough problems just with the day in general. Uh, Things getting away from me, and then adding to that being a little exhausted and being super sneezy. I'm like, we're just gonna reschedule it. And thankfully, you were available today, Jeff. So we're only 24 hours late, and not
I was
a week.
barely available. I just got off work 30 minutes ago.
Oh wow! Thank you for rushing here for this. I really do appreciate that.
Not a problem.
And Dex is saying it doesn't matter how early I go to bed, I always hate waking up. You know, I'm a little bit the opposite. Typically, it doesn't matter how late I go to bed, I'm fine the next day. Like as long I wake up in the 7 to 7:30 range, usually, and then I make the long commute upstairs to begin my workday. Uh, that's just like when my body's natural rhythm enjoys waking up the most. If I can go to bed at like 3 in the morning, I can't do it regularly, but for a night or two, I can do 3 in the morning, wake up at 7, no issues. But if I have to wake up, like I can go to bed at 10, wake up at 7, no problem. Midnight, wake up at 7, no problem. 3, wake up at 7, no problem. But if I go to bed at like 10 or 9 or 8, I would never go to bed at 8. But if I go to bed early to get up early, it just does not work at all for me. It's weird.
See, I just thought you were lost in hyperspace or something.
No, I was just so beyond the allergy and exhaustion stuff. I had a phone interview with a potential client. So I work through a buddy of mine, and he has this good relationship with another company, an automation company in the area. And I had an interview with them, and it went well. We had to shift it around, and so it kind of played wonky with my schedule. You know, when you have a meeting assigned for 12, let's say, and then so you're kind of spending the first half of your day preparing for it, and then gets
Right?
pushed back to 4, and then somehow you spend the rest of the day kind of in this limbo zone where you can't really start up something important, but you're just kind of fiddling around. That's what
Mhm.
happened. And then filling out stuff for jury duty. I got jury duty this week, and
Oh, I got a jury duty summons last week for October.
Okay, so it's so weird. Like everyone I'm talking to right now is talking about how they have jury duty coming up,
Hmm.
and it's weird. It's coincidence, I know, but it's weird just how in my circle of acquaintances that so many of us have just had jury duty or are about to have jury duty. And yeah, I mean it's very important civic duty. I mean it's one of the foundational cornerstones of our country. Thankfully, a jury by peers. Uh, uh, but I also know like I think it's supposed to be civic. Like this isn't some big thing. This is probably going to be, you know, parking ticket sort of stuff. I don't know. Uh, I don't think it's going to be anything major, but I do know that I have tuned out of the news so much that there could be something extremely major, and I'd be one of those golden jurors who has had zero like awareness of it. So hopefully this
I'm
is
kind of
something
that way
boring.
myself.
Yeah, right? I mean, I'm glad I've cut the news out of my life. We talked about this before. I'm very glad I cut the
We
news out,
have.
but I do recognize that having done that, it makes us prime jury candidates because they always ask like, are you aware of you know this thing that happened, and if you are, well, you've been biased, so we don't want you on the jury.
Maybe I should study up everything in the newspaper in the last month or two.
Right.
Right.
Oh
Now,
wow.
jury duty is very important. That's civic duty. You know, we have to serve.
Josh is saying that the last time he had to go for jury duty, he wasn't living in the same state. Now, Josh, I thought they gave exemptions for stuff like that, like you've moved or you're going to college or you're deployed, something like that.
I had that happen when I moved to Texas. I got a jury summons for Arizona, and I just told him, "Hey, I don't live there anymore." I
Huh.
said, "Okay."
Yeah, that's what I thought. Other things, okay, this is something I keep meaning to bring up. It is so not important. It's not on topic, has nothing to do with anything, but I cannot
We're
stop
putting
thinking
Thomas
about
to
this.
sleep, but go
Sorry,
ahead.
Thomas. Jury duty's not riveting. I apologize. Let me ask something that might be somewhat interesting to you. You're familiar with the movie Back to the Future, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. Checking, but of course you are. It is
of
like
course I am.
one of the pivotal movies of, do I have to say youth? Our formative years, our yesteryears. Uh, it is a staple of sci-fi time travel. Everyone is somewhat familiar with Back to the Future, and you
Great Scott!
exactly, yeah. Whoa, this is heavy. You're always using that word. Is there a problem with the Earth's gravitational field in the future? Uh, but you know, at the end of the first movie, the life of the McFlys has turned around, right? The dad's now successful, he's assertive, he's still a nice guy it seems like, but he's learned how to assert himself and not be walked over. The mom has gotten rid of her alcohol addiction. The daughter and the other son have kind of turned their lives around. He's not just some fast food phone guy or operator guy who takes your order. Uh, he seems to be a businessman, and so everyone seems to turn their life around. Imagine how
Right?
horrifying it would have been for the McFly family to have Marty in their life now, because Marty is the Marty defined by all the events that happened in the original timeline. Marty is the, to put it rather bluntly, he's like the worst version of himself for this family.
You have a point.
Because everyone else in this family, they are formed by the reality that their parents were deadbeats, so to speak, and they were weak people. And then so that's how Marty, like everything about Marty is based on that parenting style. And so now you have these successful people and it's changed the entire family, but Marty's still there? Like they must have been like, who is this child? Like all of a sudden, one day he wakes up and he comes into the house and he talks about how the car is smashed, but the car is fine. And ever since then, he has been a child I don't even recognize anymore. Like, it would have been horrifying, I think, for the rest of the McFly family.
Well, that's why you have the other two films to, help Marty along.
True, he does improve himself, gets rid of
He
the
does.
coward's trigger. Sorry, I am off center there. Let me try and fix that because it's going to annoy me. I don't know if it annoys y'all. Uh, yeah, Josh Marty did the nasty and the pasty. No, that's Futurama.
By the way, are you finished with your Back to the Future
Yeah.
discussion? Well, I just wanted to say green defeated purple. Green rule.
For the next, how many years is it?
Quite a few. Is it 6?
I did really enjoy that ending where
Omni said 4.
4 years. Okay, so I mean the presidential cycle, but I love the twist where they're like, okay, one cycle, that's 1 week, and hey, your weeks are shorter than our weeks, so it's not that bad. And like, no, it's 1 year, and even though our weeks are shorter, our years are 25% longer. just the crushing defeat that happened there.
You keep using the word.
Texas wants to know who's the protagonist of Back to the Future, Marty or George?
Who's the protagonist?
Protagonist, yes. That's a good question.
I had always thought of it being okay. The original. First of all, I'd like to thank Joe Biden for his donation. He said, "You're making perfect sense to me. How much longer until we watch SpongeBob? Soon, Joe. Soon." Okay, so hey, Traveler. So I was talking about this random thought I had about Back to the Future. Who's the protagonist of the first Back to the Future? So the entire franchise, Marty McFly, 100% protagonist. Doc Brown. Doc Brown, strong supporting character for all three. Now, the very first one, a lot of it is about George McFly. George McFly is kind of, you know what? George McFly is a well done MacGuffin of the first movie. So I love the definition. I think it was Alfred Hitchcock came up with this definition of MacGuffin, but he says the MacGuffin is a thing that drives the plot forward that the character cares about, but the audience doesn't necessarily care about. And so his prime example of that was the Maltese Falcon. The characters cared greatly about the Maltese Falcon, but we, the audience, didn't really care about it. If you're not familiar with the Maltese Falcon, excellent movie from before your time. Another example would be the suitcase in Pulp Fiction. We don't care about it, but the characters are driven by the contents of the suitcase. So, in a lot of ways, that's what George McFly is. He is the driving force of Back to the Future. He's the thing that is pushing the plot forward, getting him to be together with his future wife so that Marty can exist. So he cannot be the protagonist, is where I'm going with this.
John says it's the DeLorean.
I like that take, John.
And Omni wants a McMuffin.
And Texas is pointing out that because Marty hardly changes at all in the first one, George is the one who actually develops as a character. That's true.
Yes, point.
As many movies have shown us, character development is not required to be the main character. Usually that's a bad thing. Miss Marvel. What was her first one? Was it Miss
I don't
Marvel or
know. I have
the
no idea.
the Brie Larson movie?
I didn't watch it. I didn't care.
I can't think of her first one, but she was the main Captain Marvel. Thank you, Trevor Lauren. Captain Marvel showed us that you don't have to have character development to be the protagonist in the movie. That said, the way they did it with her was horrendous. Uh, it's
Trevor
interesting.
Lawrence says it was Captain Marvel.
It's very okay. This is such an interesting point, and then we'll get going with Babylon 5, but the fact that Marty doesn't change at all is the very point of Back to the Future. The Back to the Future, the first movie, just the first movie, he is trying to maintain the timeline. He's trying to keep it preserved so that he has a future to go back to where he exists. And so he literally can't change in that first movie because if he were to change, there wouldn't be the future to go to. I think he does. No, he doesn't change at all. His only focus, there's no growth. His only focus is how do I get back home? And that is why the second and third movies were so well done by introducing the whole plot of, well, he's a hothead. And by introducing the idea that Marty is just a hothead and this is a bad trait of his. Whereas in the first movie, like you kind of got a little hint that the way he flipped off the handle, he flipped off the ball, he responded angrily. He was a hot-headed guy. It had a negative connotation to it. The seeds were planted there, but they didn't come to fruition until the second and third movie. So, I mean, that's an interesting point. And Texas is saying, I wasn't asking if George was the main character. The main character is clearly Marty, but I think the protagonist can be distinct from that role. That's an interesting point, Texas. I'll have to think more about that. I'll definitely have to think more about that. I'll forget, but I'll try to. So let me pin this in the chat, and we will get started with our watch party, if my brain can work. Oh, Thomas, that's not a snooze. This is a fascinating conversation. The dynamics of movies and anything about Back to the Future, like that. Texas's. I'm gonna roll with it. Texas's question prompt is one of those videos I would have done a couple years back. I totally should get back in the habit of doing, to examine a single idea about a movie that I really love and dive into it and discuss like the background workings of movies and plots and stuff like that. That's stuff I used to love to go into. But that's hopefully a discussion for another video. For now, let's talk about Babylon 5. This is Season 2, Episode 4, A Distant Star. And Jeff, responsible one, by any chance, did you make notes about what my prediction was?
I did. So you thought that the distant star and the title was a literal cosmic body, and that the story is going to be an allegory of a Christian story, like the three astrologers or wise men that were led to Jesus and his birth. So a distant astronomical object appears, and Jakar interprets it as fulfilling a prophecy about the shadow spiders.
Yeah, and I'm going to stick by that. Now, I did make one other comment about maybe this is talking about like a superstar sort of person, a celebrity, but I think it's being more prophetic.
You dismissed it.
Yeah, I'm still I'm bringing it up as kind of a dirty way. You know, Gollum's last guess, hands or nothing, which was taking two guesses in one, which was quite dirty. I'm basically hedging my bets by saying, hey, remember, I did at least think of it, but I dismissed it. So I did at least think of it, but I am dismissing it. That it was a celebrity. I think it's definitely going to be the kind of a star appearing, something like that, prophecy going on. I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think that would be a fun way to get a bit of a Jakar centric episode, or at least maybe not centric, but at least a Jakar, the B plot kind of being driven forward by him, which amazingly, a lot of, I shouldn't say amazingly, like this show is constantly just knocking it out of the park, but a lot of the Jakar driving the background plots are phenomenal B plots in this series. And you know,
John
Traveler,
said,
very brave. I put myself out there to be doubly wrong. Yes. And Traveler, I too miss the virtual pub and its theme song. But unfortunately, I just don't have enough bandwidth these days to do all that. It'd be one thing if this was like my full-time job, but honestly, guys, I'm too flaky to have this be a full-time job. Like, I don't know. I don't know. So let's go ahead and jump into Babylon 5 for this week. And you may notice that I created a new clip screen thing, which is off center. Oh no. Why are you off center? It was so good and now it looks weird. Oh, I didn't have a...
Well, at least you tried.
I did. So when I set this up, I did not have a... what's the word? A reference? A point of reference for it. And so it looked like it filled the screen. I didn't have a background. That's what I'm trying to say. Sorry. I didn't have a background for this. And so it looked like it filled the entire view screen. And it turns out it doesn't. So I am editing it real quick on the fly. And we'll see how that looks. So the way this works, everyone. I think that feels out a little bit better. The way this works is you can click on that pinned comment I have up there at the top. And that'll take you to the screening room. And what that does is it lets all of us watch this episode only during this stream with our view times all synced up within a second or two, provided something weird doesn't happen or your internet connection isn't acting too egregious today. If you're in the future and you can't watch the StreamYard or the screening room with us because that's only active during this stream, you do have to have your own copy. And you can do that either by buying a digital copy from Amazon and watching it through their streaming service. You can do it, and that's ad-free. You can do it through Tubi TV and do it with ads, but for free. Or, and this is always my favorite way of doing things, you can just buy a physical copy of the Blu-rays, which I do think are still up at around $100 for all seasons, unfortunately. But just give it time, and it usually... it seems like it comes down every once in a while on price. Yeah, it's still $92. I can see it right now. So just keep an eye out there. And in the meantime, watch it for free on Tubi TV with ads. Highly worth it. The Traveler is saying, I don't have any more bed lives or dear bops. Yeah, I know. We need a hangout stream. And I do have the beard. Oh, it's Mirror Matthew. No, this is regular Matthew. Mirror Matthew would be Sans beard.
Josh Street asked, but doesn't the Blu-ray have the movies along with the series? It does not have the movies.
Yep. Movies are separate.
Except The Gathering. It does have The Gathering.
Which is the pilot, right?
The pilot, yes.
Okay. So... with all I said, let's go ahead and get this started. And if you don't have the ability to come join us in the screening room, we got the clips here right below. It should have no sound. So if there's sound, please let me know so I can mute that real quick so that we don't get in trouble. This is just a single picture every 9-ish, 7 seconds, somewhere in that range. And it just shows a still image so that hopefully you can get a reference for what we're talking about in the episode. So I will go ahead and give us a quick 3 countdown, and then you can hit that play button on whatever you are watching if you're watching this in the future. So 3, 2, 1, hit that play button. Josh is saying $100 for just a series, boo. Well, you know, it is 5 seasons. So that's about $20 a season, which is pretty fair. I mean, that's what I paid for like all the sounds. Everyone's saying sound. Hold up. I got bleed through somewhere. Where am I bleeding
Thank you
through?
for letting us know.
So I'm gonna mute that. Where's my sound coming through? I must have unmuted my desktop audio right there. Thank you, everyone. So we should be good. Let me know. Hopefully, with me talking over it, it won't have any matches. Hopefully.
Hopefully.
So is there any sound now, or are we doing good?
Yes, Omni, Swamp Rat. Yes, Omni, Swamp Rat. Texas says we're good. Thank you, Texas.
So, unfortunately, let's see. Let's see if I can pause the clips for just a second. Well, no. I muted it, so we're good. We're good. I was thinking I had paused the side tube while I fixed it, but I didn't. I muted it.
No, you didn't.
How many times do we have to tell you, leave things alone? Okay. This time was my fault, obviously. But it was also, I had to unmute my desktop audio for the interview I was doing. I use OBS to give a more professional background. And it turned out to be a moot point because they had to call from the car, so they didn't even see my video. Oh, his friend Stinky's arrived.
Yeah. See his friend Swamp Rat.
So Captain Sheridan. Yes, Captain Sheridan, which is saying, look closely, because if you're lucky, you might see 2 ships like this in your lifetime. Did he give context for that while I was quickly adjusting things?
Well, this is an Explorer class vessel, and it's huge, and they're rare. We'll see a shot. We'll see a shot of it coming up along the station. It's about as long as the station is.
And Omni's saying, is this a new voiceover? And Texas is saying, yes, this is the new voiceover that he did when he actually got to see the video.
The video, yeah. And I don't know if we mentioned last week or not, but Ivanova has the title of commander now in the credits.
Oh, I didn't notice that, but yes, she got her promotion while dealing with the greens and purples.
Yes.
And Texas telling me just be patient. They're going to talk about the ship. Okay, excellent.
Yeah, they will. There we go. See how long that is compared to the station? It's about almost the same length. 5 miles.
Oh, wow. I hadn't thought about that in proper reference. Also, a distant star. Exploration ship. I think I'm seeing the connection they're going for. So this is his friend Stinky. And it's weird for Dolores to not have what seems to be a quasi emotional connection thing going on with the commander. Like it kind of felt like they were doing a will they won't they sort of setup between her and Sinclair in season 1.
It did, didn't it?
So it's weird to have that abruptly gone. Oh, John's saying this one was written by DC Fontana. I didn't notice that.
Yes, that's right, John. And I think that's the major Star Trek connection here. I don't think any of the guest actors appeared on Star Trek at all.
Not that I saw, yeah. I am constantly blown away by the work DC Fontana did in every episode that I've seen her write something for. Like, did she ever write any novels?
I
Or was it
believe so.
just because she's a person who has a phenomenal grasp on the sci-fi concept. And Omni and Texas are both saying yes. Was was were they all Star Trek novels, or did she have any original works and books? Because I mean,
That
obviously she did great at Star Trek, but seeing how well she did in Star Trek, I want to see what one of her original works could have been. And poor Garibaldi,
uh,
he's wanting to eat something comfort food wise, and the doc is not giving him permission yet. And I'm
apparently
not sure if
she
it's.
did.
Oh, go on.
Apparently, she did write some things other than Star Trek. A few things,
Hmm.
including something called Futurist Rex.
Hmm.
Food Plan.
So, so Garibaldi, the doctor is restricting his entire diet, and I think this is just in general. He's saying that you aren't eating healthy. I don't think this was because he's still healing. This just seemed like hey, you need to cut out the sodium. You need to cut out the high meat content. You need to start eating good food. So this guy, Stinky, Captain Stinky, he is he's they're going to repair the jump gate at Europa. And so they stop by Babylon 5 to resupply. And that raises an interesting point with the jump gate at Europa. Oh, that's right. They don't have to have jump gates. Jump gates are required for smaller vessels, but larger
Right.
vessels can generate their own hyperspace tunnel.
Their own jump gate.
Own
Their own
jump
jump
gate.
point. Their own jump point, I should say. A way of entering hyperspace.
Okay. No, not Captain Snicky, Captain Stinky. So this guy must have been a distant ancestor of Commander Reed's. You may recall his dream when he was delirious from lack of oxygen, where he was making T'Pol laugh by calling himself Stinky. It was the one when uh, he and the other guy, the engineer, were on a shuttle, and there's a pinhole link. Yeah, he and Trip were on a shuttle. Air was leaking out. They were riding their wheels. Reed was doing like a copy paste for all the different women aboard the ship. Oh, hey, okay. Uh, we the character they showed right before Captain Stinky. He's the other new character for this season, but we actually haven't gotten to see him much yet.
No, that's Kiefer.
Him right there. That's Kiefer, right?
Yep, that's
Okay.
Kiefer. The character that Omni calls influential.
Okay.
And Josh Street's right. The pilot, Kiefer, was the studio's new guy. The studio wanted him. This wasn't
Okay.
something that JMS wanted necessarily. In fact, he didn't want the character. He hated the character.
Joel saying Kiefer is the key to everything.
Ah, that's good. I like it, Joel.
Oh, that's weird. My my video just disconnected. Did it jump for everyone else too?
It did.
That's interesting. So I'm gonna have to reload here. This happens sometimes. Okay.
Josh
But
Street says it did not jump for him. It's still playing, yes. It just jumped backward.
okay. I think I got it. I just had to reload the page. Sorry if it's gonna be a little funny for anyone for a minute. Okay, Charler was saying, I haven't seen this show. Why does it feel like a bad DS9? Ah, that is a hot topic, Traveler. There was definitely some uh, drama between Babylon 5 and Deep Space Nine. Specifically, that the show creator for Babylon 5 gave the series treatise, series Bible, basically, to Paramount and said, hey, I want to make this show. And the Paramount exec said, nah, we don't want to make this show. And then they said, hey, let's make this show. But it's going to be Star Trek and it's going to be called Deep Space Nine. Yeah, we're at timestamp 11:45 right now. And they're saying there's something strange going on out there in the rim. They said there's a blink, a change in space. But by the time the captain looked back, it was gone.
The captain saw something black that was blotting out the stars behind it, and the officer who was with him said he saw a blink in space.
Okay. So now we've talked about this in the past, but Deep Space Nine, while there are similarities between the two, obvious similarities. I mean, they base a lot of stuff. Deep Space Nine is not just a cheap copy of Babylon 5. Babylon 5 is not a knockoff copy of Deep Space Nine. These two things cannot, like, they don't detract from each other. They are so far separate. Like, Star Trek Deep Space Nine is such a different focus in sci-fi versus what Babylon 5 is. Trying to say that they interfere with each other is it's ridiculous. The Dr. Franklin is on a mission for everyone to healthy up.
Yes, I mentioned that. Garibaldi's given him the opportunity to do this for everyone, get everyone healthy. This scene doesn't get enough credit for this episode. It's short, but it's important.
Yeah. So this guy behind her has just said that there are some concerns among the Mbari people on the
Sorry.
station that she is no longer, that Dolores is no longer one of them. Ooh, that's a sick burn. So, she said, "Understanding is not required, only obedience." And his response was, "Obedience, yes, but only to our own kind." So by her making the sacrifice to bridge the species, they are starting to try and kick her out because they no longer see her as pure, so to speak.
Right.
And Texas is saying there's always going to be purists. Are you a B5 fan, a DS9 fan? Why can't you be both? Exactly.
I agree, Texas, completely. They're both great series.
Franklin, he has bit off more than he can chew. So, uh, he uh, he wants her to eat more,
Basically.
uh, and he's saying, "Well, I just want you to, when you do eat, you're not eating the right stuff. I want you to eat more, have more iron, eat more of this stuff." And she looks at it and goes, "I'm going to gain weight." And he's like, "Well, initially." So it's interesting in a universe that has jump gates and hyperspace, how much true exploration would exist in the sense of time spent between destinations. The captain was just talking about the big empty. But if you have the ability to jump to a very specific location, would you be spending time in the empty at all? Or do you have to kind of guess about coordinates until you have an established exit point? So I mean, think about it.
Uh,
Say you wanted to get to our solar system. If all
Texas,
your Go ahead.
Texas is saying, just wait. I think you're going to get the answers to your question, or a lot of them anyway, in this episode.
Okay. So I was wondering, like, let's say you are in Alpha Centauri and you want to get to our solar system, and you do your best to triangulate things, and maybe you're a spacefaring civilization, so you actually can go to multiple points in your known jump points, and you can kind of get a triangulation for what you think the distance is. Like we already do this to estimate distances based to see the degree change between the two farthest points of our rotation around the sun, and we can see what the small degree change is between star points, and we can figure out, okay, we're probably at this distance. So I mean, the more points you get, the better it would be. So I wonder if, to be safe, you would deliberately not jump to the exact inside of the solar system, especially since you're like, well, I don't know if I'm going to jump into an asteroid field or a planet. So maybe, yeah, calculating parallax. Thank you, Trevor Lauren. So maybe they have to get to what they think is close and then spend time kind of leapfrogging their way closer. And then once you get to the edge of the solar system, maybe you actually have to just drive.
I think you're overanalyzing this.
I might. Because I mean, think about it, like you get to the edge of the solar system, now you have to drive, you have to chart what the planets do so that you can consistently get to the right jump location.
So look at Sheridan's desk right here.
Oh, it's very messy.
It's very messy. Yeah. So this is a good scene between these two characters.
And he's upset that he's being swamped by things like trivia, pointless trivia. And this isn't me. Like I don't want to have to be doing this. And she's pointing out, yeah, you're used to running a ship, a tight ship, but Babylon 5 can't be run that way. It's not a military ship. It's full of civilians doing civilian life.
I think Sheridan's feeling like a fish out of water at this point.
And he's upset that the upper brass has turned him into a politician, a bureaucrat. Ooh. She kind of gave him a little diss there. She said, "You're here because the president thought, extreme emphasis, thought you could handle it." And he said, refresh my memory. It's the Tokari ambassador. What?
Does he have feathers?
Feathers. Uh-oh.
Now this scene's interesting. JMS did not want a lot of fire and sparks, and he had to go down and handle audio down mix.
Mm-hmm.
And they filmed this scene while he was away, and the director decided to do all this fire and sparks.
Whoopsies. Retro Robot Radio is pointing out that on the Andromeda TV series, the slipstream literally only opens near the gravity of a star, so it's impossible to open a slip jump into the emptiness between, and the emptiness is unexplored. And interesting, Star Trek was kind of the opposite, that once you were too close to a planet's gravity well, you couldn't go to warp. At least, I don't know if they actually ever said that on the series, but I know that in the books it was a big deal.
Oh, they made occasional references going to warp inside of a solar system. It wasn't that they couldn't, that it was just not advisable.
So I love that. Oh no! So they're all upset with their meals, so they swap around to get what they want. Because Ivanova is eating what Garibaldi would like, and Garibaldi's eating what Sheridan would like. So they switch around, and right as they switch around and they're about to dig in, Franklin comes up behind them. Okay, so they're saying that they think it's going to take about 48 hours to fix it, but by that time they'll drift so far in hyperspace that they'll never find the lock-on signal again. Which is interesting. Does it imply that you can get trapped in hyperspace?
Yes. There are these signals that burrow through hyperspace between jump gates. And you determine your position based upon these signals, and you follow along those signals.
So you would think you could exit, but I guess there'd be a risk of what do you exit into. I guess the other issue,
right?
Oh,
It's called a beacon.
I guess the other issue would be the way they're setting this up. It sounds like unless you lock onto a beacon before you enter hyperspace, you can't plot a course. You're just blindly flying through hyperspace at that point.
Pretty much. Yes, Joel. Not to be confused with bacon. And Omni says there are no stars to lock on to.
But as an engineer type person, how they establish the rules for their faster than light travel fascinate me. And just it's interesting that they're going by the idea that you have to have a known start point and follow along a specific path to a known exit point. That you can exit anywhere, but by doing so, you're going to actually get lost.
You can exit anywhere if you have your own jump engine to form an exit.
Okay, so you have to have a jump engine to enter and exit. Now,
or a jump gate to do it for you.
And even though that exploratory ship was quite large, I do notice that they used the jump gate for Babylon 5.
They did, yeah, to leave. They didn't have to.
Okay. Because I could have seen it being something where they don't have a jump gate on board.
And Omni's right. They used the jump gate to save energy.
Okay. Yeah, so the pilot there, Sheridan is talking about how we're going to go and try and find them. We're going to try and save them. And one of the pilots points out, look, how are we supposed to find them if we don't have their location? And he's saying there's a drift in hyperspace.
To this point, no ship has been saved in hyperspace that was lost.
So he's saying we're going to take a page out of the lifeboat handbook, and they're basically going to set up their own series of beacons. The first fighter is going to go in, lock onto the jump gates beacon, and drift out. And the next one's going to go lock onto their beacon, drift out. Next one will lock onto that one's beacon. So it's like they're all tethered together. And Omni's saying it's only 1,000 kilometers that they can go.
Now, of course, distance is quite different in hyperspace, so compared to regular space.
Except the ropes are made out of quantum 40. Yeah. And yeah, that's an interesting question, Retro. How far is 1,000 kilometers in hyperspace?
That I cannot answer. I just know it acts differently.
Oh, that's what the jump gates are made out of. Quantum 40. Okay. And it's interesting. How hard do you want to get your sci-fi? Like, I think it's almost better to keep distances nebulous. Like, 1 meter in hyperspace equals 100 meters in real space equals 1 light year. Whatever the ratio is, it's almost better to keep it very nebulous. Because once you get too hard with it, I know things can get messy because then you got to pay attention every single time you do anything in hyperspace. But if you just leave it, if you set up some guidelines and you leave it nebulous, then each episode that looks at something like this fits because you're fitting those guidelines instead of having to be like really rigorous. We have drifted exactly 5.264 meters and yada, yada, yada. I mean, there's nothing wrong with getting very hard with your sci-fi, but if you're doing a long series, it gets real difficult.
Without the beacons, hyperspace just looks formless. There's nothing you can recognize. I love how they portray it here in the show. Yes, Omni, influential.
And so the pilots have been able to get a signal somewhat to our missing ship, our distant star. But now Babylon 5 is losing the signals to the pilots. They're having a hard time kind of threading that needle. And I agree, Jeff, by the way. You made a comment a second ago about how you like the way they're doing hyperspace in this episode. There's a game called Star Control.
Mm-hmm.
And the second entry to that series had a hyperspace like this, where you would leave the outer bounds of the solar system, get far enough away from the star, and you transition to hyperspace. And the way they did it was, imagine you took the three-dimensional universe we're in and just squish it flat. And so, you'd have like the Big Dipper would look like a Big Dipper in hyperspace because everything's just been compressed from our point of view on Earth. Yeah, Trevor Lauren, Star Control, one of my favorite series of all time.
Oh.
What? He touched the ship, or it's a spider, shadow spider.
Yes, indeed.
The chain has been broken. I like the way that it just kind of whooped out of there too, as if hyperspace was flat but layered at the same time, and so like he intersected that layer and then just kind of passed through to the next one. I'm not saying like I don't think that was a shadow spider speciality. It just seems like that's the nature of hyperspace, as if you had multiple sheets of paper that were lying on top of each other, but were somehow able to like intertwine at the same time. Yeah, Traveler. So there's a race that we've only seen kind of in passing so far, and they're all shadowy and black. And the one time we saw them as the creatures and not just a ship, they look somewhat arachnid to me, so I call them shadow spiders. But Trevor Lawrence, so I never really could understand how to play Star Control 1. Every couple years, I still play Star Control 2, the Urquan Masters, one of my favorite games of all time. The creators of Star Control are making a brand new Star Control game. So Star Control 3, the company that bought it took in a weird direction. It's not part of the first two. They are making a true successor to Star Control 2. I'll have to look up what it's called. Alliance of Free Stars, maybe. Check it out. They did a Kickstarter campaign that was successfully funded. Well worth the checking out. And yes, by the quick thinking of our key figure, shooting in the direction he wanted them to go, they were able to go the right way, even though they didn't have that beacon to lock onto. And and what I was saying about the pieces of paper flat on top of each other and yet somehow layered, like a weave, like a weave of a fabric, you know, that would make more sense about why you have to have that beacon, because you're not just traveling through a normal space straight line, but you can easily get onto a different layer. Okay, yes, I. It is called Free Stars Children of Affinity, Trevor Lorne. The Traveler, yes, your potato PC will absolutely run Star Control. It is a video game from 1993. You are aces. And the Urquan Masters is open source, so you actually can play it for free.
Nice. Dr. Franklin is just everywhere.
uh, Trevor Lorne, here's a link to the site, their site. I don't believe him. I do not believe Garibaldi. I think he's making a sob story right now.
Wow.
Yeah,
Garibaldi a liar, huh?
I am. I am.
Wow. Wow.
I think he's making this. Okay, so he's crafting this story about how it's his birthday and how every year he cooks this dish and it's something his dad did and he really admired him, and just he's going on and on and on about it. And so Franklin says, okay, in that case, how about you make enough for two? But I think Garibaldi spun the whole thing just because he wanted to eat this dish and get Franklin off his back.
Well,
I cannot paste a link to the Bagna Quadra recipe.
the recipe actually, I believe, is on Lurker's Guide to Babylon 5 for this episode. Let me see if I can find the link.
Traveler, here is the Urquan Masters. That's the one on Steam, but I don't know if there's a difference between these two, but this one is the open source one that I'm aware of, and you can add in extra video or not voiceover acting, music. Like it gets pretty impressive.
So there's the link on the recipe and how to prepare the meal, with a lot of other stuff in there too about this episode.
And this is a recipe that that Garibaldi just described.
Yes. And I do believe this is something that his dad prepared for him for his birthday. I mean, his birthday is coming up after all, so.
Okay, well, if you think that, then clearly they don't make a comment upon it.
I don't think Garibaldi would lie about that.
So this is one of the starfighters that got knocked off course.
Yes, well, his engines went out when he got hit, but then the ship repaired itself. But now he's just out there without a beacon.
But fortunately, one of the Shadow Spider ships passed him, so he's trying to follow their path because, if I'm understanding the way they're doing this, by exiting at that same point, he will exit through a jump gate like this. Which, interesting. That implies the Shadow Spider.
I think he was correlating the trajectory of the Shadow vessel with its prior course to try to plot his course back to his gate.
But that kind of implies the Shadow Spider vessel came out the Babylon 5 gate.
Not necessarily.
Okay, no, he said the direction was... Okay, he's explaining it. Okay, so he's explained that the first time he saw the ship, it was at a right angle to the Babylon 5 jump gate. So he took a guess. He said, I had nothing to lose. I got on his path and made a right angle, and I got lucky. Later, traveler. You have a good evening.
Thanks for joining us, traveler.
Where is John Sheridan?
Not to be confused with John DeMarco.
I love the Daffy Duck in the background.
Second favorite thing in the universe.
John DeMarco is making the cotta. Texas is saying that's not Daffy Duck. That's the Egyptian god of frustration. Things must have changed in the Egyptian pantheon in the future. So I'm not sure if they're implying that his talk with Delenn has given him a bit of a boost to morale to push through this paperwork, or if it's more of successfully seeing this action through has made him realize that yes, it's different, but it's not like I'm going to wither behind a desk. There is action to be had.
I think it's a little bit of both.
All right.
And welcome, Deej Odyssey.
Hey, Deej. When you wish upon a distant star. He's saying he's swinging through to give a like and say hi before I crash. Well, I am glad you're here, man. Are you, DJ? It's been a while since I've seen one of your farm life streams. Are you hitting the what's it, harvest season? It's getting pretty late in the year, right? I want to say usually around this time you're picking or harvesting corn. Start picking this weekend. All right, then.
There you go. I wasn't even sure you were working on the farm anymore, Deej.
Texas is asking, did I notice the ship's emblem on the wall of the bridge? I did not. I'll have to make a note to look for that when I rewatch this stream. And yes, Josh, another episode of Matthew being nowhere near right with a prediction.
Oh, well, you tried.
I did. I tried twice, actually.
You did.
I did. And I was wrong, twice wrong.
Well, no one's
some might
perfect.
even say I'm often wrong.
Often wrong soon.
Exactly. So I will soon be often wrong again when I make a prediction for next week. But first, Jeff, what did you think of today's episode?
You know, I do some research before we do these streams, and I listen to two different podcasts. And one of them has a number of newbies, as well as a few people that have seen the series before. And on that podcast, all the newbies hated this episode. They absolutely hated this episode.
Huh.
Well, the ones that had watched it, for the most part, they didn't think it was that bad, or they thought it was pretty good. Now, I do see the point. The acting of the visiting captain was not good at all. I thought it was pretty phoned in. And the main plot didn't get started until like 18 minutes in. So I do see that point, but otherwise, I liked seeing life on the station. You know, Garibaldi going in for another checkup after his injury, and the food plans and the comedy with that. I thought that was all good. We got some good scenes with Delenn in this story. It was more of a character piece than anything, and the central character in it all was Sheridan and how he was feeling about being at Babylon 5. He wants to be out there exploring on his own ship, running his own ship. Now he's stuck on this station where he has to play ambassador and diplomat, and he was struggling with that. So I like seeing that. I like seeing these characters have flaws, working through them, getting better for it, and the characters interacting. And I think the chemistry is getting better and better between the characters. It's more natural. It was a little stiff, I thought, in season 1 at times. So it was good to see. I like the action scenes in hyperspace. We get a little explanation about hyperspace in this episode. And we see an explorer class vessel. I think this is the only episode we actually see one. But it was neat to see. And we get a little hints about the shadow spider vessel thingies. So it was a pretty good episode.
Yeah, and one of those hints about two of the hints. One, the growing awareness.
I'm sorry, Dolores Thomas. I meant Dolores.
Dolores. The growing awareness that they are out there. So last week before, Jakar showed up, and I think it was last week. He talked about, yes, they're out there. They send a ship out. It gets destroyed to cut off awareness of them. But we're starting to see people are becoming aware of them. Like, hey, we had a guy, and he could have sworn he saw something just for a second, and then it was gone. And I do really okay. So obviously, I really enjoyed the portrayal of hyperspace in this episode. I love how they seem to be taking it, and how it's a non Euclidean space, that straight lines aren't necessarily straight. And I think that's really interesting. And that's why it's not just that you have a ship that comes in and you can see it approaching you, and oh, there it goes past you, and you can see it going by. It's no, everything is all kind of wibbly wobbly in there, and you are briefly in the same plane, and then they go to a different plane. What was it? There was an episode of, not Star Trek for once. There was an episode of the best new Star Trek out there, with Captain Mercer and the Orville. There we go.
Orville. Okay.
There's an episode of Orville.
I always thought I almost thought you were going to say Prodigy.
Oh, excellent Star Trek series.
I thought so.
But I still think the Orville is the best Star Trek series out there right now.
I would agree with you.
And there was an episode where they did the Flatland. I don't know if you
Oh,
ever
yes. Read
read
Season
the
1.
book, The Flatland, but there's an idea of what if you had a higher dimensional being go into a lower dimensional space, like a 3D person in a 2D space. How would that interact? And they actually had that happen in the Orville. And I kind of got the feeling that's what we were seeing here. Like, imagine, like I keep saying, papers on papers, and you're on one paper and you can see each other and you go through the next. Like, just imagine how that would look to a two-dimensional being to go through a three-dimensional being to go through its plane of space. Really fascinating stuff to me. Out there right now, sorry, Thomas, I can't say definitively that the Orville's not coming back. We can hold out hope. Yeah,
We've
exactly.
had pretty good hints that they're going to film next year. So we'll see.
Hey, the Orville was such good sci-fi that my wife, who cannot stand sci-fi, loves the Orville.
It's a great show.
Oh yeah. So I really enjoyed that aspect of hyperspace. I enjoyed the fact that with the Shadows people, they made a specific reference that I saw it, but it was going off in a vector I've never seen anyone take before. So they clearly have either hyperspace paths that we're not aware of, or they have a much higher understanding of hyperspace, which I kind of think it might be like the Vaudoir from Voyager, where they had the transwarp conduit network and were able to come in and out as they please. So everyone else is stuck around doing warp, and you got the Vaudoir who are using their own network to go much faster and have their own points of interest there. So I wonder about that, and I'm sure time will tell us if this is just, hey, we're more advanced, we have more routes, or if this is truly we're more advanced and we can do what we want to with hyperspace, which would be very interesting. Yeah, Vaudoir does mean foolish, but it was a reference to the Vaudoir race. And Vaudoir means foolish in like ancient Talaxian or old Talaxian.
John says, just in Talaxian. What do they know? And I like how we're getting little sprinkles of information from episode to episode. It's not like a huge data dump all at once.
Yeah.
We're
And
just learning as we go.
One of the other things I'm enjoying about the first 4 episodes so far is we are getting to see how Sheridan. I like to think it's not Sinclair. Sheridan. I like to see how Sheridan is now acting with these people. That we have, in the same way that Sinclair and Garibaldi had past history, we get to see that Ivana and Sheridan have past history. And then he's building up his rapport with everyone else. So I enjoy us getting to see that this is how things would work in real life, It's not just, oh, hey, we have a new commander, the end, everything's the same as usual. They're actually taking the time to recognize there's going to be a transition period. He's struggling with his position, his new command. He's getting to know the people under him. He got to have that really nice moment last week with Garibaldi where he put the gun away and had that good conversation with him. So I'm greatly enjoying it. If you were someone who didn't enjoy overthinking everything in life and weren't really being spurned on by hyperspace and how does it work, how would this episode appear to such a person? Would I think that they are justified in thinking this is a weak episode? No, I think it stands on its own even aside from that. that it is a pretty standard sci-fi trope. There is a ship lost and you have to rescue it. Whether that rescuing is from a quantum singularity, from a time loop, from the episode "Eye of the Needle," the Voyager early on had to rescue themselves almost. Because it no, it wasn't "Eye of the Needle." There was one where Voyager had several episodes where they kind of revolved around the same plot, but they had an early on episode where they were picking up their own distress call in the future from the past. Uh, so it is a pretty standard scene in sci-fi to have a ship rescue. I think they did it very well in this episode. Parallax, thank you, John. Uh, and Omni is confirming. Yeah, thanks, guys. So I don't have a problem with the plot. I think the solution they came up with worked really well.
And they only lost one ship, and that was because of the Shadow Spider craft.
Yeah. So I think on its own, it was a decent episode. I enjoyed it. I'm surprised that there was so much disdain for it.
Yeah, I'm surprised too. I've always enjoyed this episode. Not as strong as some, but still pretty good. And I want to point out, I said the main plot of this episode doesn't get started until about 18 minutes in or so. Josh Street points out, wasn't the main plot of the episode being Sheridan coming to grips with being in command of B5 and not the rescue in hyperspace?
Yes.
And Josh, you may have a point with that.
And on that, Josh, this is what I love about Star Trek and sci-fi in general, that clearly this episode did, so maybe that's why I enjoyed it so much, that the main plot line of any Star Trek episode, classic Trek, none of the new stuff, not new Trek, but classic Trek, it was always, here's a sci-fi thing happening, and that's the motivation for what's happening, or that is the thing that moves plot along. But the real point of the episode was, how do we react to this situation? So an episode where Beverly Crusher, like, people are disappearing and she can't figure out why no one else can remember these crew members. So the sci-fi thing happening is, something weird is going on. People are disappearing and Beverly's the only one who remembers. But the actual point of the episode was, how did Beverly react to this situation? It turned out she was in some sort of subspace vacuole that was collapsing, and Wesley was, and the Traveler had to get her out, something like that. Same thing with this episode of Babylon 5. The sci-fi thing that happened was a ship is lost in hyperspace, but the real point of the episode, as Josh has so aptly pointed out, was, how is Sheridan reacting to it? How is he coming to grips with his new position, where he doesn't feel like he's being truly utilized? He feels like he's turning into something he doesn't want to be. He feels like he's being abused or taken advantage of by his superiors to put him in this position in the first place. How does he deal with all that and move forward? And that is the true point of this episode. So great observation, Josh.
I agree completely. Thank you, Josh.
Well, Jeff, any final thoughts before I make my prediction for next week?
Yeah, no, this was a pretty good episode. I put the link in the chat if you want to go check out the recipe, if you want to make it yourself, see what Franklin was going on about, how good it is. So check that out.
Excellent.
Forward to next week.
So I did click on that link. Is there another link inside of it?
It could be that your browser is saying, oh, we don't know about this site because it's not encrypted. So you may have to tell it, yeah, it's safe to go there.
Sorry, I found it. It's I thought it would be just the recipe. And I'm like, what's all this?
No.
So no, yeah, in the notes,
it's a summary of the whole episode with notes.
If you scroll down toward the bottom, about 75% down, there's a section called Notes. And the second bullet point says Garibaldi's special dinner. And it's a half cup olive oil, quarter cup butter, 1 stick, not margarine, which I'd have to change it. I can't do dairy right now. 5 cloves garlic, finely chopped. 6 anchovy fillets, mashed, and black pepper. And then there's details about that. So in the notes, right there.
There you go.
Okay, so next week, the episode 5, season 2, is called The Long Dark. Ooh. There are many ways this could go. But first of all, you have the Long Dark and kind of the way of the movie Pitch Black, where once every whatever number of years, all the planets aligned such that it was truly nighttime. And whenever it was truly nighttime, things got crazy, which frankly I think is a bit of a... I think Pitch Black may have been strongly inspired by an Isaac Asimov short story of the same general concept, where there was a planet that was always daytime, and they tried to figure out what it would be like at nighttime. And so like they made this special room, and they put lots of little pinpricks in it, and like, oh, maybe this is what the sky will look like at nighttime. There'll be lots of little dots, kind of, sort of. It'll be this twilight thing, and then nightfall. Yes, Joel. And then it actually... I'm not gonna give it away, but nighttime happens, and the response of the people is it was outside their expectations. It was so much more awe-inspiring than they could have imagined. So maybe that's the direction they're going, where it'd be a long night, but that wouldn't really make sense for Babylon 5, because what does Babylon 5 care if they're in the shadow of a planet for a while? Long Dark could be referring more to stuff of a spiritual nature, where they're entering a period of... or maybe not spiritual nature, but of political turmoil. So kind of like the Dark Ages, the Long Dark, or... and this... I think this is where I'm going to go with it. What was my third thought? Well, no, because I was gonna say maybe it's talking about how the Captain Stinky from this episode talked about the Big Dark, and being a reference to the space and just time spent out there. So I don't feel like we're going to get a second episode like that where you have someone talking about space in general, a guest star coming on and talking about space. I think this is going to be more of the Dark Ages kind of thing, where you have political things going on, and we are entering a time of darkness. Not literal darkness, but darkness in the sense of darkness of the mind, darkness of intelligence, darkness of thought. And how would that affect things, though? But I'm going to stick with that vagueness. I think we're talking about entering a darkness of thought period, and how we're going to try to prevent that from happening. There we go.
Okay.
Yeah. Best thought there. Just the one at the end. John saying, will I go 0 for 3? So someone pointed out that I am 2.5 for 26 on correctness.
2.5.
2.5. And I somewhat trust their math there. So let's see if we can bump that up to 3.5 for 27.
Who made that observation?
I forget. It was a while back ago, maybe toward the beginning. Someone pointed out that I was 2.5 for 26. Maybe if they're still here, they can pipe up and say, "Oh yeah, that was me." But we will be doing this ideally at our regular hour of scampering instead of our most unexpected Matthews wasn't thinking and here we are now hour. And I was giving the guy just a second, see if they'd respond. Okay, so I'm gonna assume whoever said it isn't here, but someone mentioned it toward the beginning of the stream. So guys, thanks for hanging out with us. And I look forward to seeing you next week as we watch The Long Dark and see how wrong I am about my prediction.
Green defeated purple.
I pushed the wrong button, and there we go. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to hit that like button and share it with your friends. If you haven't subscribed yet, I hope you will, and be sure to hit that bell icon to be notified of all the updates I do on this channel. If you want to support the work I'm doing here, then I hope you'll consider becoming one of my Patreons, where you'll get early access to all kinds of videos. And until the next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May he cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.